If the consumer wants a simple process, they don't want the hassle when it comes to buying a car, they don't want it to take all day long, then why, you as a salesperson, why are you trying to make it difficult? Why not speed it up? Time equals money. You want to make more money, save some time. Today, we're going to talk about just that. Welcome to Car Talk, where I give you my 20 years of experience on my 20-minute drive to work. Inside the car dealership, being the salesperson, I think at times we overcomplicate everything that we do. And sometimes, yeah, the customer takes part in that. And so it makes it a little bit difficult for everybody. But you have to understand, what is the customer trying to do? They're trying to make sure they get a fair deal. They're trying to make sure they find the vehicle that they want. They're trying to make sure that they save time. They don't want to go through the hassle. So if we know that, why don't we just meet the customer where they're at? Why are we not talking about the things that the customer is thinking? And let them know that. One of the most simple things I think we can do as salespeople early on in the introduction in the process of selling a consumer a car is just being honest and letting them know that you're there to help them. And one of the statements that I like to make is just this: I'm here to help you find a vehicle or two that you would consider buying. And after we do that, I want to show you all the numbers and see if the numbers make sense. If we can't find a car that you would consider buying, the numbers doesn't matter. And if we do find a couple cars that you would consider and the numbers don't make sense, we wouldn't expect you to buy it. It doesn't really get much more simple than that, but we make it more difficult because we always are putting things ahead of each other, right? Like sometimes we get talking about what vehicle that the customer wants, and then all of a sudden the trade-in comes up, and then we're focused on the trade-in, and then we go back to the car that they're trying to talk about, and then they're talking about the monthly payment. Now, I understand all that's important. That's all that's important to a customer. And, if you go online, if you go on TikTok, now you're going to see these professional negotiators who negotiate on part of the customer, which that's fine. If a customer doesn't want to go through the hassle, that's fine. But if you watch those videos and you watch what they're doing, they're the ones that are actually taking advantage of the customer. They're the ones that are charging the customer $500 to $1,000 to pre-negotiate a deal for them. And I understand why, because a lot of dealerships make it a nightmare. But it doesn't have to be that way. And there's a bunch of salespeople out there I know that don't do that. When you're going to buy a car as a consumer, the most important thing should be the actual vehicle that you're buying. That should be the most important, I would assume, right? You're going to go spend whatever set of money, whatever monthly payment, whatever cash price that the customer wants to pay. That's already kind of locked in. Now, wouldn't you think as a consumer, at least I know me, that what I'm buying is going to be the most important? That's number one. The features, the colors, the options, the make, the model, the trim level, all that stuff, the color of the interior, all that stuff is going to be the most important. And then after that, once I've locked in the vehicle that I want to buy, I also know that there might be 2 or 3 other choices that I would consider if the first one didn't work out, if I couldn't find it, if it just became a little bit more expensive than I really wanted to pay for it. I'm probably going to have 2 or 3 other vehicles that I would consider. So when the customer comes to the dealership and they're kind of locked in on whatever vehicle there is, they're trained to not tell you that. They're trained to not tell you the exact vehicle that they want. Because if they know that you have the perfect vehicle for them, they're going to get ripped off, which is not the case in 2025. You can't do that, right? There's so much information out there. Most customers have the information. They know what a fair price to pay is. They know what the fair price on their trade-in is. They've kind of probably did some monthly payment math. They kind of know what the interest rates are if they're familiar with their credit score. But we start we start to take all that, put it together, and mix it up and make things difficult. That's when things become difficult. Things aren't difficult when the customer walks in and wants to talk about what vehicle they want to buy. That's not when things get difficult. Things get difficult when we start on when they want to buy. You're going down the path of the sale, and then all of a sudden they talk about their trade-in. All of a sudden now we're going up, talking about their trade-in, and we stop the whole process. And then in the middle of the talking about their trade-in, they're trying to talk to you about what interest rates, and then they want to talk about monthly payments and and then what's the best price on the car. That's always going to happen, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. But I think that if you can build a little bit of rapport with your customer and just tell them the truth, let them know, I understand that you don't want to come to the car dealership. I understand you probably had horrible previous experiences. I totally get that. I'm here all day long. I'm here 8 to 10 hours today, but I don't expect you to be here that long with me, okay? But what I know in all the years of me selling vehicles, what I've found out, and correct me if I'm wrong if this doesn't apply to you, customer, but this is what I found out. Number one, the most important is making sure that you get a vehicle that you're 100% happy with. And when I say that, I'm talking about the color, the trim, the make, the model, the features. That seems to always be the most important. And I've also found out that most customers always have 2 or 3 different choices that they might consider. They might consider different colors, few more options, few less options, maybe a different make, maybe a different model. But I want to do whatever I can to make sure I get you the vehicle that you're most happy with. So what I would like to do before we get into anything else is I'd like to conquer number 1 first. Now, I understand that the monthly payment, if you're going to make payments, the interest rate, the trade-in, and all of that's going to be important. I totally understand that. And I want to respect your time, and I want to do everything I can to make sure the entire deal is perfect. But before we start getting too confused, and then we start getting a little bit upset or anything like that, let's just see if I have a vehicle you would even consider buying. Because if I don't have a vehicle you would consider buying, you know that the trade-in price from me isn't really going to matter, or the monthly payment, or the interest rate. None of that's really going to matter if I don't even have something you would consider. So before we get into anything else, would that be okay if we just kind of get together, talk a little bit, figure out if we got something here that you might actually consider? And once we do, then yeah, we'll do the trade appraisal for you. We'll make sure we get a fair number. We actually use Kelley Blue Book. We use all the guides. We take everything into consideration. I'm sure you've been online. You've looked at the trade number. Maybe you've been to a dealership before me and you've already talked about it. Then we'll talk about the monthly payments if that's what you want to talk about. We'll talk about if you want to go through a bank, a credit union, or you're pre-approved already. Is there a certain term that you kind of worked out? And then you'll tell me, whether or not you want to put a down payment, how much you want to put down. And what my goal here is to have a streamlined purchase for you that goes super easy, it's simple, it's fair, and you leave here today either with a car that you absolutely love, or you leave here going, man, that was one of the best salespeople I've ever dealt with, even if you don't buy a car from me. How does that sound? Does that sound all right? Does that sound like something we can do? Why are we not having these conversations with the customer? Let's not make it difficult. It does not need to be difficult, guys. That people are online telling customers like, oh, be careful, you're going to go into the store and they're going to pull out the old Foursquare on you to negotiate, and they don't want you to know the interest rate, and they don't want you to know this, and they don't want you to know that. It's like, no, That's not the case. I want you to know everything. But everybody's got to fully understand, like, a deal. What interest rate do you qualify for? If I haven't seen your credit, how can I tell you what you qualify for? If I haven't did a full walk around of your trade-in, got the VIN number, got the miles, have the photos, how can I get you a fair assessment on the value of your vehicle if I don't even know what the condition is? I'm guessing at this point. I'd be guessing on the interest rate. Not all vehicles are priced the same, especially, new or pre-owned. They're not the same because the miles are going to be different, right? If you're looking at a car that's pretty popular in black and somebody has one down the road in bright red, there's a chance that black one is worth a little bit more because not a lot of people want to drive a bright red car. One might have tan leather versus black leather. Most likely the one with black leather is going to be worth a little bit more because not a lot of people want tan leather. There's all these little factors that go in to how the vehicles are priced, how the deal works out, but nobody gets to take the time to talk about all that because we get so convoluted in all this other stuff, and the customer gets upset because what they're hearing online, they're watching TikTok videos or how we're going to be shysters and all this stuff. And I don't blame them because that's how it was when I first started. It was like that a little bit. I was on the tail end of it, but that's how kind of it was. So how do you overcome that with the customers if that's their idea of it, if that's their idea of what's going to happen? Or maybe that's what happened the last time they purchased. Or maybe that's what happened the last time they were actually at a dealership. It was exactly the way they thought it. And now all of a sudden you're the difference. You're the guy or the gal that's going to be different. Have these conversations with the customer. Have them up front. Be authentic, be yourself, and just be a real person. Okay? When you leave the dealership, you and the customer are the same. Just because you work at the dealership doesn't mean you're some, I don't know how to put it, but it's like just because you work at the car dealership doesn't mean you don't have ethics and don't mean you're not a stand-up person. And when the customer does buy the vehicle for you, then they know that, right? And then they like you and all that stuff. So let's not wait till the end for them to get to know you. Okay? So let's just have those conversations with the customer. Let's have a great experience for everybody. And today, let's just find a vehicle that they would consider buying. Let's just find a vehicle that they would consider buying. And then after that, we'll put the rest together. Sound easy enough? All right, guys, well, let's make it happen. Talk
to you. We all show up, but we ain't built the same. One's chasing glory, one's playing the game. One's got the gift, don't break a sweat. The other's out here grinding with nothing left. One wants the crowd, the lights, the fame. The other's in the dark, just building a name. One was born with it, one had to grow. One's got talent, one's got hustle.